After more than 60 years, the mystery of the Alcatraz escape has finally been solved. In 1962, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin vanished from the island's maximum security prison using improbable tools that made their escape seem impossible. This immediately created chaos. These prisoners were gone. How could these prisoners have escaped from such a high-security prison? For decades, authorities searched tirelessly. Now, in 2025, researchers have revealed breakthroughs that could finally unravel what happened that night. Did they drown in the frigid waters of San Francisco Bay, or did they survive? The truth is finally within reach, putting an end to one of America's most legendary prison mysteries. The Escape Team. In a stunning development, the U.S. Marshal Service has released age progression images of the 3 inmates who famously vanished from Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Bay. Although authorities long assumed the men perished in the frigid waters, persistent sightings, letters, and forensic clues have fueled speculation they may have survived. Now, more than 60 years later, the Marshals have reopened the case, hoping these modern renderings will finally shed light on one of America's most enduring mysteries. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, known as The Rock, had a reputation as the most brutal maximum security prison in the country. Operating from 1934 to 1963, it housed some of the nation's most notorious criminals, including Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, and Robert Stroud, the infamous Birdman of Alcatraz. At its peak, the island housed a small community of approximately 280 prisoners and 250 staff members, isolated by cold, treacherous waters. The harsh conditions, rigid routines, and the belief that escape was impossible cemented its reputation. At the heart of the escape plan was Frank Lee Morris, a calm and calculating mind. Orphaned at age 11, he bounced around foster homes and received his first conviction at 13. By his late teens, he had been arrested multiple times for narcotics possession, armed robbery, car theft, and grand larceny. His years in prison in Florida, Georgia, and Louisiana culminated in a 10-year sentence for possession of stolen goods. Morris was known for his sharp mind. With an IQ of 133, placing him in the top 2% of the population, he spent his confinement reading, drawing, and observing. But intelligence was only part of his identity. He was also known for escaping custody. In April 1955, he escaped from the Louisiana State Penitentiary with fellow inmate William Martin in Slidell, and they then made their way to Kansas City, where Morris was captured a year later during a robbery with his accomplice, Earl Brancy. When Morris arrived at Alcatraz on January 18, 1960, as inmate AC 1441, officers viewed him as quiet and harmless. Officer Mills even described him as a shy, tidy, and good-looking young man, stating that he seemed like the last prisoner who would attempt to escape. At Alcatraz, he quickly gained a reputation as an intelligent, disciplined, and competent prisoner, qualities that soon attracted the right partners. Those partners were brothers John and Clarence Anglin. John, an older blond man with blue eyes, arrived at Alcatraz on October 24, 1960, as inmate AC 1476. Clarence, taller and more muscular, with dark hair and hazel eyes, followed him on January 16, 1961, as inmate AC 1485. Their criminal history had begun early. Clarence was first arrested at age 14 for breaking into a gas station. In the early 1950s, the brothers engaged in coordinated bank robberies, targeting only closed businesses to avoid harming anyone. They insisted they used a gun only once, and even then, it was a toy gun. Their most significant job took place on January 17, 1958, when John Clarence and his brother Alfred robbed the Bank of Columbia in Alabama and escaped with 19,000 euros. The FBI quickly apprehended them, and all 3 received 35-year sentences. They were transferred to Florida State Prison, Leavenworth, and Atlanta Penitentiary, where they repeatedly attempted to escape. In one attempt, Clarence cut open 2 boxes of bread, hid John inside, piled bread around him, and nearly sent him away in a truck until a suspicious supervisor discovered the plan. Their persistence led to urged officials to send both brothers to Alcatraz. One detail about the Anglins stood out. Long before prison, they were known for their ability to swim in the frigid waters of Lake Michigan, often impressing relatives by diving even when ice was floating on the surface. The final figure in this story was Allen West, born in New York City on March 25, 1929. He had a long history of car thefts and escape attempts. By the time he drove a stolen car across the Georgia state line, he had already served several sentences on prison farms. His violent, impulsive, and confrontational behavior frequently put him in conflict with prison staff. Throughout his life, he was arrested more than 20 times. In 1955, West was incarcerated for car theft at Atlanta Penitentiary, later transferred to Florida State Prison. During an escape attempt, he held a gun to the assistant warden's head, stole his car keys, and fled in the man's vehicle. After being captured, he was sent to Alcatraz in 1957 at the age of 28 as prisoner number 1330 and returned in 1958 as number 1335. His time on the island included periods of solitary confinement in D Block and work as a maintenance orderly. Despite disciplinary problems, he constantly talked about escaping and gravitated toward anyone who shared that focus. The connection between these four men gradually formed. On January 30th, 1960, Morris was moved to cell 138 on the outside of B Block, with West in the adjacent cell. Their relationship got off to a rocky start. West's incessant talking and accordion playing reportedly irritated Morris. At the end of that summer, West was sent to D Block after helping orchestrate a disturbance during a meal to distract the guards, while another prisoner committed a stabbing elsewhere in the mess hall. Morris likely encountered John Anglin shortly after his arrival in October 1960. The two knew each other from Atlanta. When Clarence arrived in January, the brothers occupied adjacent cells. Accounts differ on whether the four men knew each other before Alcatraz, but their shared histories in Florida and Georgia suggest some level of familiarity. When they found themselves lined up in the same cell block, their pasts began to intertwine like pieces of a puzzle taking shape over time. Each man brought experience and a history of slipping through the cracks of the prison system. Together, they set in motion a plan that would become the most legendary escape from what was once considered the most escape-proof prison in the world. The Grand Escape Plan. Many believed Frank Morris was the architect. Journalist John Campbell wrote that Morris learned of a critical weakness in the prison's infrastructure during a conversation in the Brush workshop. A fellow prisoner told him that back in 1957, a prisoner named Willard Winhoven, an electrician serving time for theft, had removed a fan motor from a ventilation duct leading to the roof of B Block, and a replacement had never been installed. The prisoner joked, "Ask the bull for the key," implying that Morris should simply ask the guards for access. Instead, Morris kept the information to himself. He waited until West returned from solitary confinement in early 1972, asked for an accordion like West's, and then quietly shared the plan with the Anglins and West. However, West claimed the escape had been his idea. During cross-examination, he insisted he had devised the plan in the spring of 1961 while painting the prison ceiling, noticing that the ventilation ducts might offer an escape route. He said he pitched the idea to the Anglins, who then brought Morris into the picture. Prison officials doubted his story. West had a reputation as a braggart, and his limited education made it unlikely he could have devised such a detailed plan. Morris, on the other hand, had the intelligence, background, and escape history to lead a plan of this magnitude. Investigators also found instructions for making life jackets and boats in Morris's cell, not West's. However, even if Morris spearheaded the strategy, West played a crucial role in gathering resources. It was his second time at Alcatraz, and he understood the routines, the officers, and the inmates well enough to obtain what they needed. Whoever conceived the idea, the plan began with the ventilation system. The prison roof contained 8 ventilation openings, but only one had never been sealed with cement. Once the men discovered this, they realized that if they could reach the roof and clear that opening, they could escape. The ceiling line could become their path to freedom. West's task of cleaning up after the plumbers who installed hot water faucets gave him an important clue. The hot water pipes ran straight up the interior wall. If they could reach that wall, the pipes could serve as a ladder to the top. The problem was how to open the grates in their cells without tools or alerting the guards. Morris first tried burning the concrete with an electrical wire plugged into the ceiling light socket, but the method failed. That left only one option: digging. Each night during the quiet stretch between 5:30 and 9:30 p.m., the prisoners' informal happy hour, the four men worked on the grates behind their sinks. They chipped away at the concrete using the sharpened ends of spoons stolen from the mess hall, creating small openings that slowly connected into larger ones. After each session, they covered the new holes with balls of wet toilet paper, smoothed with soap to match the texture of the wall. Finally, after many nights of digging, Morris loosened the concrete enough to remove the metal grating completely. The opening, however, was too large to conceal without arousing suspicion. Using cardboard from the prison's art supplies, he cut a piece the exact size of the grating, precisely drew the grating pattern, and painted it the same shade of institutional green. When he finished his work each night, he slid the handmade replica into place, perfectly hiding the damage. The others followed the same method. Morris added an extra precaution by placing his concertina wire case in front of the vent, while John Anglin hung a long raincoat to conceal his. Now they faced a different challenge: finding the perfect decoy. Mannequins as decoys. The bars on their cells were finally wide enough for the men to squeeze through, but leaving their cells empty presented another problem. The guards would immediately notice their absence. To disguise their bodies, they fabricated decoys. Clarence Anglin took the lead, stealing hair from his job at the prison barber shop to create lifelike heads. His first attempt was rudimentary, a rag and soap head topped with stolen hair for eyebrows and eyelashes. They nicknamed it Oink for its gangly appearance. Then came Oscar, a much more realistic creation, molded from toilet paper and soap to resemble a human head. When the men left their cells, they planned to leave the mannequin heads on their pillows and fill the blankets underneath with rolled-up clothing, shaping the decoys to mimic sleeping bodies. While the prison continued around them, Morris, West, and the Anglins had built a secret workshop, a small underground industry where they produced all the tools necessary for their escape. They faced a formidable challenge: the frigid waters of San Francisco Bay. To survive, they would need flotation devices and a means of crossing the water. Morris, drawing inspiration from a popular mechanics article, designed and built life jackets and 2 pontoons measuring approximately 6 by 14 feet. Using waterproof navy raincoats swapped with other inmates, inflating the rafts required ingenuity. Morris removed the keys from a concertina wire he had acquired and fashioned them into a bellows. Wooden oars served as paddles, and to strengthen both the rafts and life jackets, he applied a technique known as vulcanization, developed by Charles Goodyear in the 1830s, to harden rubber and make it tear-resistant. To navigate the dark, cold waters, Morris also created a makeshift lantern. 2 flashlight batteries connected to a small bulb inside a plastic box with a metal latch that served as a switch. In the spring of 1962, Clarence Anglin was the first to climb through the pipes to the top of the cell block and reach the roof vent. What he found was a setback. The fan, his escape route, was sealed with a solid metal cap secured with screws. Clarence tried to loosen it using a makeshift wrench fashioned from bed fasteners, but it wouldn't budge. West stepped in, demonstrating his resourcefulness. When the prison vacuum cleaner broke down, he volunteered to repair it, and discovered, to his surprise, 2 motors inside. He repaired one, removed the other, then fitted drill bits and used the motor to loosen the screws holding the fan cap in place. With the escape route finally accessible, the plan was set to unfold. On the night of Sunday, June 10, 1962, Morris alerted the others. The next day would be the day they would attempt to escape from Alcatraz. A night of adrenaline. On the night of June 11, 1962, after turning off the lights at 9:30, Morris and the Anglin brothers placed their dummy heads on pillows and quietly slipped out of their cells. They made their way up to the roof vent, moving cautiously through the darkened prison corridors. Of the 4 men, Alan West had not yet cleared the hole at the back of his cell. Rims of cement still blocked his path. While working from inside, Clarence Anglin tried to widen the opening from behind the wall using a pipe provided by Morris, but the noise risked alerting the guards. Although West was panicking, he continued chipping away at the stubborn cement. Meanwhile, the Anglins grew impatient. Anxious not to miss their chance, they left West to finish on his own and pressed on. At about 10:30, Morris opened the hatch leading to the roof. A loud noise echoed through the west gun gallery. An officer described it as the sound of someone striking the end of an empty 50-gallon oil drum with the palm of their hand. He reported it to the lieutenant on duty, who investigated but found nothing. The escapees ran across the roof, but in their haste, they dropped an oar and left behind a spare life jacket and a raft. They reached the edge of the roof and climbed down a 45-foot pipe along the wall of the prison kitchen. John Anglin swung too hard, producing another loud bang at 10:45, alerting the guards once again. By 11 o'clock, Morris and the Anglin brothers had likely reached the shore. They assembled the raft, donned their life jackets, loaded supplies, and waded into the icy waters, disappearing into the night. Meanwhile, West continued his desperate work. He chipped away at the cement with grim determination. At 1:40 a.m., he finally managed to break through. Climbing onto the roof, he found it empty. His comrades had already vanished. For a moment, he lingered, perhaps weighing his options before returning to the duct, crawling back to his cell and sliding onto the bed. They had left him behind. He conducted the routine head count in B block. When he tried to rouse Clarence Anglin, the prisoner did not respond. Alarmed, Bartlett called for Lieutenant Bill Long. Long knelt beside the cell, putting his head close to the bars. I put my left hand through the bars, smacked the pillow, and yelled, "Get up for the head count," he later recalled. The pillow fell off and Mannequin's head rolled to the floor, revealing a nose broken by the fall. Meanwhile, another officer yelled from Morris's cell, "I've got one here, too." Long ran to the phone, and the alarm blared throughout Alcatraz. In that instant, it became clear that the prison's most infamous inmates had vanished, leaving behind only convincing illusions of life and a mystery that would endure for decades. Intense search. Following the Alcatraz escape, an unprecedented search was launched across the bay, the surrounding coastline, and the skies. Authorities discovered the men's secret workshop where every tool, dummy, and life-saving device had been meticulously assembled. Bloodhounds were brought in to track the escapees' path, following the trail to the water's edge, but no further. For the next 10 days, multiple military and law enforcement agencies combed the area by air, sea, and land. On June 14th, a Coast Guard cutter recovered an oar floating about 200 yards off the southern shore of Angel Island. In the same vicinity, workers aboard another vessel found a plastic-wrapped wallet containing the names, addresses, and photographs of the Anglin's friends and family. A week later, on June 21st, a life jacket washed ashore at Cronkite Beach, nearly 3 miles from the Golden Gate Bridge. The next day, a prison boat retrieved another life jacket just 50 yards from Alcatraz, its ropes still knotted. Beyond these fragments, no other trace of the men was ever found. Amid the speculation, eyewitness accounts added to the mystery. San Francisco police officer Robert Checky, stationed at the San Francisco Marina in the Marina District on the night of the escape, claimed to have seen a fishing boat near Alcatraz. After 15 minutes, the boat departed, heading toward the Golden Gate Bridge. Some theorized that the prisoners had arranged an outside pickup. However, the FBI dismissed Checky's account, noting that it would have been illegal for any unauthorized vessel to approach within several hundred yards of the island. Initially, FBI agents assumed the raft had capsized and the men had drowned. Their belongings, personal items no fugitive would willingly abandon, were left behind, reinforcing this theory. However, with no bodies recovered, the possibility that the prisoners had reached the shore could not be ruled out. On July 17th, a month after the escape, the Norwegian ship SS Norfjell spotted a body floating 15 nautical miles from the Golden Gate Bridge. Without a large cold storage facility or radio contact with the Coast Guard, the crew was unable to recover it. San Francisco County Coroner Henry Turkle doubted the body was that of one of the escapees, noting the improbability of a body remaining afloat for more than a month. He suggested it was more likely Cecil Philip Herman, a 34-year-old baker who had jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge 5 days earlier. Interviews played a crucial role in the FBI investigation, and Alan West, left behind on the roof, proved to be their most valuable witness. Bitter about being abandoned, West enthusiastically described the escape plan. According to him, the group intended to row north to Angel Island, rest briefly, then swim across Raccoon Strait to the shores of Marin County. Once ashore, they planned to steal a car, rob a clothing store, and scatter in different directions. Despite this testimony, the FBI maintained that in the days following the escape, deceptions and false claims emerged. A man claiming to be John Anglin called a San Francisco attorney, Eugenia McGowan, seeking to arrange a meeting with U.S. Marshals. When she refused, the call ended abruptly. A postcard addressed to the FBI surfaced with the message, "Ha ha ha, we did it, Frank, John, and Clarence." Handwriting and fingerprints proved it was a hoax. Another caller claimed to be Morris when calling acting warden Arthur Dollison, but hung up when asked about personal details only the real Morris would know. The Alcatraz escape, combined with the escalating costs of maintaining the prison on the island, sealed their fate. On March 21, 1963, the federal government officially closed Alcatraz. And yet, the question remains, could they have survived? Recent discoveries. Many experts immediately dismissed the possibility that the escapees could have reached the shore. Shortly after the escape, the Assistant Director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, Fred T. Wilkinson, commented, "The tides and winds that night were strong, and these convicts were not the athletic type. Only a trained athlete could make such a swim." However, history has shown that waters are not impossible to cross. Several people, including school children, have successfully made the same crossing, demonstrating that under the right conditions, it could be done. In July 1972, the Norwegian ship Norfjell reported seeing a body floating in the water wearing prison-issued pants, about 20 miles northwest of the Golden Gate Bridge. The crew, en route to Canada and out of radio contact, did not report it until returning to the United States the following month. By then, the body had disappeared, never to be recovered. Decades later, modern science intervened. In 2014, researchers from Delft University modeled the currents and tides of the night of June 11, 1962. Their study suggested that if the escapees had left Alcatraz around 11:30 that night, they could have reached Horseshoe Bay. At the same time, debris and equipment would likely have drifted toward Angel Island, consistent with the life jackets and other belongings recovered there later. However, leaving earlier or later would have made survival highly improbable. Guard testimony confirmed that the prisoners launched their raft around 11 p.m., aligning with the ideal window for survival. In 1993, former bank robber Thomas Kent provided further information during an interview on America's Most Wanted. He claimed that Clarence Anglin had arranged for a former girlfriend to meet the group off the coast of Tiburon and take them to Mexico, from where they planned to continue to South America. FBI records also show that Morris had purchased a Berlitz book, Learn Spanish on Your Own, supporting the notion of international plotting. In 2003, the television program Meatbusters tested the feasibility of the escape. Using a raft modeled after the prisoner's design, the team successfully navigated from Alcatraz to the shore, demonstrating that the journey was indeed possible. Meanwhile, the FBI conducted its own tests on the life jackets. Reinflated and weighted, all 3 vests remained airtight. They slowly lost air over the course of an hour, but enough remained for the men to stay afloat by periodically blowing into the valves. Additional evidence added further intrigue. A 2011 National Geographic documentary, Disappeared from Alcatraz, cited old FBI files reporting a raft found on Angel Island on June 12, 1962, with footprints leading away from it. No further information about the discovery has been released. That same day, Marin County authorities reported the theft of a blue 1955 Chevrolet license plate KPB076, an incident also reported in the Humboldt Times and the San Francisco Examiner. The following day, a motorist in Stockton, California, more than 80 miles east of San Francisco, told the California Highway Patrol that he had been forced off the road by 3 men driving a blue Chevrolet. Every piece of evidence, every sighting, and every clue fueled the enduring mystery. Had the fugitives vanished into legend, or had they truly survived the waters of San Francisco Bay? The final hiding place. For more than 50 years since their disappearance, countless theories have attempted to uncover where Morris, John, and Clarence Anglin went and what became of them. U.S. Marshal Michael Dyke, who inherited the cold case in 2003, admitted he didn't know if any of the men were still alive. But the evidence he found made him doubt it. Some reports suggested that the Anglin brothers' mother received roses for years without a card, and that the brothers attended her funeral in 1973 disguised in women's clothing, despite a heavy FBI presence. In 2015, the History Channel documentary Alcatraz: Search for the Truth revealed Christmas cards with handwriting verified as belonging to the Anglins. However, none of the envelopes had postmarks, leaving the delivery dates uncertain. That same year, a photograph purportedly showing the Anglin brothers hiding in Brazil, approximately 13 years after their escape, appeared in a History Channel special. Fred Bricey, a friend of the brothers, claimed he encountered them in Rio de Janeiro during the 1970s and took the picture. Forensic experts working for the family confirmed that the photo was taken in 1975 and concluded that it was highly likely the men were the Anglins. Even so, the age of the photo and the sunglasses worn by both men prevented a definitive identification. Retired U.S. Marshal Art Roderick called Bricey's photograph absolutely the best actionable lead we've ever had. In January 2020, facial recognition experts from the Irish agency Ident Woo confirmed that the men in the photo were indeed John and Clarence Anglin. Other evidence surfaced over the years. On his deathbed in 2016, a man named John Leroy Kelly confessed to his nurse that he and an accomplice had aided in the escape. He claimed the two men waited in a white boat in the bay and picked up the fugitives as they rowed toward shore, eventually traveling up the coast to Seattle. This account matched a report by off-duty San Francisco police officer Robert Cecchi, who recalled seeing a white boat with its lights off in the marina on the night of the escape. It initially appeared empty, but then the boat illuminated the water with a spotlight before disappearing, a detail the FBI dismissed at the time. In January 2018, a letter purportedly written by John Anglin surfaced. It revealed that he had cancer and would surrender if authorities promised on television that he would not spend more than a year in prison and would receive medical treatment. The letter also revealed that Clarence died in 2008 and Morris in 2005. CBS San Francisco reported that it obtained the letter from an anonymous source. In 2013, the FBI fingerprinted the letter, but the results were inconclusive. On November 15, 2025, a YouTube collaboration brought the infamous Alcatraz escape back into the spotlight. Mark Rober, along with journalist Johnny Harris and video journalist Cleo Abram, meticulously recreated the escape using the same plans and materials from the period as Morris, West, and the Anglin brothers. They studied original magazine articles, improvised tools, and handmade utensils similar to those believed to have been used by the prisoners. The team built a handmade raft, oars, and life preservers, then launched themselves into the currents from Alcatraz. Their journey took them not to Angel Island, as is often assumed, but to a point near the Golden Gate Bridge. The successful experiment, similar to the Mythbusters method, proved that the long legendary escape was entirely plausible. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos on screen for more incredible stories.